Gardening is largely a do-it-yourself venture, but when a professional is used, it can mean some pretty impressive changes in the landscape and a path to long-term success. Up next, garden gurus on this edition of Great Gardening.
Every tree has a moment when it shines.
That's called moneywort or creeping Jenny.
You can go in and do a rejuvenating pruning. Forage and feed for our native pollinator population.
A garden really gives you peace of mind.
Hello and welcome to Great Gardening. I'm Pamela Fish, along with our resident garden experts, Bob Olin, horticulturist and educator with St. Louis County Extension, and Tom Casper, president of the Duluth Garden Flower Society and board member of Duluth Community Garden Program. Thanks for coming back this week. Last week we talked about with the warm weather, don't jump the gun, and then it got cold.
It did. We hit that one right.
Yeah, nice work, Bob. And it really is, as much as our springs are, each one is unique, there's really kind of benchmarks that you need to follow, especially in gardening. You don't want to rush things too much.
I always tell people you got to follow both the calendar and the thermometer, and then you got to take a little chance. So we did seed a few things that got covered, which is an option for you, but this is really not unexpected.
Right, and it's warming up out there today, so that's good to see. Well, we also want to welcome the St. Louis County Master Gardener volunteers who generously donate their time to answer your called-in questions. You can reach them at 218-788-2844 or 877-307-8762, or you can email your questions to askgardening@wdse.org. Well, a lot of things that are growing right now, you guys, are things that are being grown indoors or are undercover maybe. We did get some pictures of some sprouts here from new squash, kale, and cucumbers planted by Jill at her home near Cromwell. Thanks, Jill, for sending those in. And this is what a lot of people are dealing with right now. Just stuff that they've got started out inside.
Right, and people have plenty of opportunity. There's plenty of opportunity to seed, and in some cases, you might want to wait a little longer. The vine crops, we really only need about 10 days, because you always say we can get them up, we can germinate them, but now what do I do with them, particularly with the kind of weather that we still could potentially have?
Okay,
Yeah.
so there's time to start seeds.
Oh, absolutely. I think even tomatoes, this is a good time to seed. You don't want to wait too much longer, but you really don't want to have to hold them. We want them to move right out into conditions that are much warmer, and that's going to be about mid-June or so. So there's plenty of time for all of these things.
And of course, in the garden, we're seeing lots of green. Some of the early season perennials are up, and if you're looking into the woods, you're seeing a lot of the deciduous trees that are starting to bud, lilacs that are opening. So really, spring is here, and even with these cold temperatures of this week, we're still seeing a lot of advancing in our plants. So
Very encouraging indeed. Yeah. All right. Well, this week we're talking about the use of professionals for gardening and landscaping projects. And last summer we met two of them while out touring two very different gardens in Duluth and Bayfield. Here's a look at the results.
Basically a blank slate. There were some drainage issues over here where the current patio is. So the first year we worked on shedding the water and creating an outdoor living space with the existing patio slab. Made gardens around it to give a little bit of enclosure from the street. And then in about a 3-year process, we worked our way around the house. On the far side of the yard, we bermed material that we had cut out the year previous.
One of the things I learned from Dave is how to make use of all the organic refuse. So everything that was wasted, that was dug up from the previous season, we had dumped over here to create berms.
Considerations, I would say, are their lifestyle, to think about their yard or space on the whole. What, lawn, activities for children, quiet places for an evening patio, whatever their lifestyle is.
And you've been an independent landscaper / gardener for about how long?
I suppose a decade or so, most of my adult life in various capacities. More structured the last 4 or 5 years, devoting more time to it. I think we met our goals. Pam and I working together was a wonderful process and still is in maintaining the gardens.
It was basically just a field that had a lot of heavy equipment over it when they were building the golf course. It had a lot of sumac and a lot of weeds. So it was rough to begin with. So we had to get all that out. And that was about 2 weeks. And they wanted a water garden. So we began really just to completely clear the whole site. It's a big project, and so obviously you need a source. It needs to make the garden look natural, and it was because it was like a 3-dimensional garden in that you were going to be able to see it from all directions. It's a lot of heavy machinery. You know, some of these rocks are 1/2 ton, 3/4 of a ton that we put in here, and this pond's nearly 5 foot deep. But it's more of a formal planting style. It's more of an English garden style, if you like, really. And so that's why the planting is in drifts, because on a bigger scale you must amp up your planting to create enough colour en masse so it doesn't look too speckly.
It started out with the idea of a pond that
A pond.
gradually grew into 3 ponds and more extensive gardens.
This is a much more extensive garden than we have in Minneapolis. We couldn't manage, I don't think, 2 that are this size.
We were pretty open as to what happened. Richard was the person with the ideas, and we just went with it.
This one was a real pleasure to build. John and Betty are really lovely clients to work with, and so it was a very enjoyable. It was about 1.5 years.
I've certainly learned a lot from him and just from the experience of doing this.
Well, obviously, a really extensive project there in Bayfield, beautifully done, as is the one in Duluth, which Dave Luckstein, am I saying his name right, did? And he's a landscaper, but also an educator.
Yeah.
And so a couple of different examples of how you can use a professional.
Well, and both of those gardens were featured on tours last year. The spring tour to Bayfield, which was just outstanding, and then we followed that up with an outstanding tour here in Duluth, and we're at the garden that Dave was involved in the design of. Just outstanding examples of whatever scale you want to do your garden at. There's people that can help you, or there's opportunities for you to do it yourself too. So
That's right. You know, what was so dramatic about that was before and after, and it just shows what's possible out there. And as you point out, you can take it in any number of ways. There are any number of ways you can control costs, or any number of ways you can just spend all the money that you want. And it's what you're after. There's something for everybody, but everyone could do a little something to improve the appearance of their property.
Yeah, very encouraging to see that it happened in just a few years' time. We'll go back to the DeMars garden a little later. We did see a tour of their garden last fall during our harvest special, but there's even more, and it is definitely worth revisiting. But we want to get to some of these questions that have been coming in already. The phones have been ringing, so here's what we have. Joanne from Proctor just purchased garlic bulbs, wants to know when to plant them and how to store them if I'm waiting until fall to plant them.
Well, I really think that what she should do is get them in the ground right now.
Okay.
And you know, it'll diminish the bulb size. You can still get a crop by planting very early in the spring. I'm afraid if she tries to hold them, that they're going to sprout, and that depletes the bulb, and it's just not going to work for her. So garlic generally in the mid-fall, and as a second option, right now, very early in the spring.
So by mid-fall, meaning mid-October.
I would say about October 15th is a good date to shoot for, and that's really the best. You want them down on the ground. You don't want them to merge in the fall, but you want the root system to start in the sprout to begin in the fall. That gives you a jump on the season.
But Joan has an option. That's good to hear. Bob from Lake Vermilion says his peony buds don't bloom.
Without a little
Knowing
more
anymore,
conversation
yeah.
from Bob from Lake Vermilion, but look at how much light he's getting. They really require about 6 hours of sunlight to do well. Also, if the root system has over time accumulated more and more soil on it, could be too deep, so he might want to look at raising it. And the other thing is, after years and years of blooming, if you don't divide them, they will go out of bloom. So
yes.
those 3 things look at and work towards, and you should have better success with it. So.
Okay. Marion from Duluth says, when can you put weed and feed fertilizer on your lawn?
That again is a good question. I'll say this, I think it's too early at this point. She wants to control the weeds, which are broadleafs generally. You got to get them up, you got to get them actively growing, and I'll just take a shot and say perhaps mid-May or the 3rd week in May would be a good time to make an application like this. Weeds and feeds always go on right after the rain because the herbicide has to adhere to the leaf surface. Fertilizers go on just before a rain.
Follow-up question, and this one I got via email from Mike in Kenosha Township, who wanted to know, is composted manure too strong to put on your yard?
Well, it really wants to make sure it's well composted or well rotted, at least 3 years. But in small increments, he wouldn't want to put a lot on if he's adding it to the garden, maybe, you know, an inch layer and then cultivate it into the soil. Well, if he's using it as top dressing on his lawn, very little for that. So.
And we always want to be sure that it's well composted. And you can take a little area and see if you're going to germinate any weed seed, because the one downside of manure is that you can carry in a lot of unwanted weeds. And then you might have to go back to our previous question about weed and feed for control.
Okay. Lynn from Lakewood Township wants to start wildflowers from seed in a spot where pine trees were. The stumps are gone. It's south facing. What kind of soil preparation do I need?
Well, the more soil preparation she can do, the better chance she's going to have of. She really wants that seed to adhere to the soil. So open soil or exposed soil is the best, and certainly underneath a pine tree or any matured kinds of trees, any kind of improvement she can do, compost or something to lighten the soil a little bit, will improve the chances of those seeds germinating and doing well. So.
And really all those pine needles need to be raked off because they're just going to be in the way at least initially. Maybe you can use them as a mulch a little bit later on and bring them back, but seed soil contact is what we need.
Okay, one more before we move on. Can rhubarb be separated now? Does it need special soil or fertilizer? That comes from Dorothy in Cloquet.
You know, rhubarb is a great plant because it doesn't need much anything except good drainage and sunlight. And this is the perfect time. You know, they're emerging from the soil right now. And divide it up, give yourself, you know, a couple of good buds underneath there. And just as you mentioned earlier, Tom, in many cases, dividing will actually encourage the growth, whether it be peonies or whether it be rhubarb. I'd do it this week. It'd be great.
And follow it up with a good fertilizer.
Okay.
Just a little bit, though.
A little bit the first year, yeah.
Good. Good information. We'll come back to some more questions a little bit later. But now we want to go back to that landscape on a golf course in Bayfield, where the positive working relationship between homeowners and an area professional turn their tasks to enjoyment.
We're in Bayfield, Wisconsin, overlooking Lake Superior. I'm Betty DeMars, and he's John.
And welcome to our garden.
Part of what I like about the gardens is not just the big splashy things, it's the little things along the paths, the little flowers that are coming up or these that pop. It's just, that's part of what I really like the most, rather than the big wow factor ones. And the little mosses here with the little white flowers are some of my favorite. The pinks are just great. They're just ready to pop. And then this yellow that's all throughout my garden, that's called moneywort or creeping Jenny. It's really invasive, but it's just fantastic. It goes right into the water. I love the flow of it. I love the gentle flow. And all of the water plants are ones that I brought from home too. And then the lotus plant, which hopefully will bloom again this year. I also love these bright yellows. I don't know if you noticed the other one over there. That's a smoke bush that's way over there. That's a serviceberry, and then this is a Korean maple there. It's like a Japanese maple, but not. It's definitely hardy here.
The nicest part is the color that he's brought in.
Yeah, all seasons it has color, and it just seems to be changing continuously. We have two different white of the astilbes. This one that's really thick and full, and then just more of the feathery ones back there, which I really, really like. This is called lynchus, Richard got this plant and put maybe 3 down there. Neither of us knew the name. Well, you will see it's all over my garden now. Almost like lambs here. And that's the place where the lynches started. And isn't it a nice color? He loves roses, and there are some beautiful. That one right there with the red and white is just spectacular. They were really winter hardy. This is bugbane, do you know that? Isn't that just beautiful? Again, we weren't sure about the name, so I did research, and I got a few more of them for over there, but isn't that beautiful? Then there's these Icelandic poppies, at least that's what I call them, these tiny ones, and then you'll see some in the path too. They're just so sweet. I don't know what I really would do if I didn't have help in between times. I kind of come and I'm spoiled that quite a bit of the weeding has been done. But then I love coming in and working.
Again, a gorgeous landscape and quite a variety of flowers there.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Beautiful, and that's what's coming in just a short time here, huh, Tom?
That's right. We'll look for it soon. Okay. Well, we have some pictures to share of some very successful straw bale gardening last season. It was done by Mike and Suzanne Stingle in rural Duluth. They got quite a bounty. Take a look at, I think that's a pepper that he's holding. They put up a number of straw bales and did very well with it. So I wanted to share those pictures because it's been kind of a popular thing, and I did get a question from a viewer who is asking about preparing for this year. And she wants to know, first of all, can I use the same straw bale as last year? And she also wants to know if cold water can be substituted for warm water when you're curing that bale.
Okay, a couple of good questions. You'll want to look at the bale, and obviously if it's decomposed, because part of the curing process is we really want to get this decomposition process moving along. If it isn't decomposed, go ahead and use it again. As far as the using cold water in curing, people may not be aware of what she's talking about, but she's starting with a synthetic fertilizer, granular fertilizer, and then she's going to apply this to the straw bale to try to break down some of that carbon initially to prepare a bed for planting. And the problem with using cool water is you don't get solubility. The fertilizer doesn't dissolve real readily. So I definitely use lukewarm water to start that process.
Okay, all right, great. Well, Diane in Hermantown has a hot and dry area that she wants to add succulents to. Would that be recommended?
Sure, probably the best choice for something like that. Okay. But again, hot, dry, if she can improve the soil a little bit, will pay dividends as those plants develop. So.
And just to note, our topic next week is succulents.
So
We're
Diane
talk more about that.
Tune in.
Tune in next week, Diane. Okay. Sharon wants to put a circle of mulch around some existing trees and is wondering, is it okay to spray Roundup on the green grass, or do I have to dig that out first?
Bob, you handle the pesticide.
It's okay.
I just sit here.
As I understand the question, she wants to take the grass out. Mm-hmm. You know, even if she uses Roundup at this time of year, it's not going to be real effective because the plant's moisture and so forth is translocating up rather than down. So she'd be better off with a fall application there, or perhaps it'd take 2 applications. I think if she dug it out, if she's going to dig it anyway, she may as well dig it and dig very thoroughly. And this time of year, that probably would be a very good option for her. When you dig, if you get all the underground roots and rhizomes, it's out of there. If she were to make an application of Roundup, she's probably going to have to wait and possibly make another application. So I'd be digging this time of year.
Yeah,
okay.
and good for her getting that grass out of there. That's going to, again, help that plant do better, or those trees do better, by getting some of that grass and that competition, especially on our young trees, but even trees that are a little bit farther along, reducing that and reducing the potential damage for mower damage or other kinds of things that might impact the health of that tree. So.
All right.
And one quick other point, even though Roundup is effective on green leafy tissue, if you get any overspray even on the bark of a tree over time, that can actually impact the tree too. So you have to be cautious.
Be very
with
careful with it. Okay. David from Duluth, north of Pike Lake, has a question for Tom. Is it okay to use pine and spruce needles for mulch on my flower beds?
It's okay, and we did just talk about this a few minutes ago, but and they're all right. I'm not a big fan of them They really don't do a lot for the soil. They do help a little bit, but there's some other mulches that are better for it, and certainly adding compost over those. They really, you know, folks have talked about it for years that they acidify the soil and they do things like that, but they really don't. So I would, if you have the choice, not use them. So.
Okay. Donna in Carlton wants to know, how soon can I start planting my June-bearing strawberry plants?
I would say that she could start right now with those if they're in good shape. Where we're concerned is next year when she has flower buds. That's what we have to be conscious of in protecting. But the plants themselves will take 20 degrees, and I think she could go ahead and do that right now.
All right. Barb from Duluth has a birch tree that is dripping from the upper trunk. What do I do? Why is this happening?
That's pretty common this time of year, although most of them, the sap or those things are kind of ending now, or as far as that sort of flow, you know, the maples are kind of wrapping up and birch as well. So it's more than likely there was some damage up there, whether it was from a storm or something like that. She really shouldn't do anything. Allow it to heal on its own is probably the best thing she can do for it. So.
Okay. Tom from Barnum says, should a gardener be concerned about consistently high levels of phosphorus in the soil? And he says he's had it tested frequently.
You know, that is a very good question, because we build phosphorus, and this is why we really don't advise people to use common fertilizers like a 10-10-10. If you have a heavy soil in this area, you've got all the phosphorus you need to begin with. So select the fertilizer without the middle number. As far as running into problems, you can, but at very, very extreme high levels of phosphorus, and most people are not going to encounter that. So I wouldn't be overly concerned there, but again, don't add unnecessary phosphorus.
Okay. Larry from Two Harbors wants to know about a goji plant, a berry plant.
Yes.
Do we know about that?
Well, yeah.
Can you get it here?
You can. Well, you probably can't get it at many of the nurseries and garden centers here. It is a Zone 5. But if folks want to try it, it's really a berry, kind of has almost a strawberry-shaped berry. The shrub will get about 8 feet by 8 feet in size and produces a lot of berries. But whether they'll do well here or survive is really winter dependent.
Are they tasty?
So.
Do we eat them?
Yes, you eat them.
Okay, great. Mary from Hayward, how can I get rid of lamium in my shade garden? And she wants to not get rid of the hosta astilbe and daylilies that are there as well.
I'll answer this one. Marion, use these.
Yeah, I was going to say, the only good
Dig it
option you got.
Or his. It's really, the only option is to dig it out.
It's the only option she really
All
has
right.
there, yeah.
Okay, good. All right, well, it's time now for this week's Growin' Show, which has a nice combination of vibrant spring and summer blooms. Just outside of Proctor, this variety of Japanese iris thrived last season in the garden of Shirley Leonardson. Shirley says it was raised from seed shared by a friend. The hardy rose, with a vibrant blend of yellows and pinks, goes by the name of Henry Kelsey. And this bright mix of annuals, above an assortment of green perennial favorites, looks like it's ready for a pleasant summer bicycle ride. From Ellie Dreyer in Duluth's Woodland neighborhood, an assemblage of delphinium in a beautiful hue of blue stood tall last summer, beside the double red blooms of a fern-leaf peony. Ellie grows a gangly martagon lily in a deeper shade of crimson, and she anxiously awaits the return this spring of her pristine white double bloodroot, handsomely contrasted against the earth tones of the perished leaves and pine needles below. Share your own garden pictures by emailing them to greatgardening@wdsc.org or send them to 632 Niagara Court, Duluth. Love to see those pictures. We've been getting a lot of them coming in.
And Shirley and Ellie are both avid gardeners.
Master gardener. Are they both master gardeners?
Shirley
is, yeah.
gardener, but both members of the Garden Flower Society and great gardeners in this community.
Oh, great, great. Well, thank them. Thank you to them for sending those in. Let's see, we got a question from Linda in Rice Lake. Has Chinese lantern, how do I get rid of them? I have 200 of them.
Oh, they're self-seeding on her, huh? Be careful what you ask for, huh? Some people have trouble germinating seed. I would say multiple cultivation. As soon as they germinate, knock them down. So even before you can see them germinate, you're just going to have to work that area consistently multiple times.
Okay. Kathy wants to know, is it too late to spray cherry trees with something like Captain?
Too late. It's really way too early. And
Okay.
again, as a classic example of being sure what you're trying to control. Captan's a general purpose fungicide. It would only go on the leaf surface if in fact we're trying to control anthracnose and other leaf-borne fungal disease. So way too early to even think about an application.
Okay. And Roseanne in Duluth has had a calla lily for many years, never seems to get them to flower.
The thing she'll want to do is make sure it gets lots of sun, and if she can, start it inside. And a lot of our summer blooming bulbs, if you can start them inside, get them going a couple of weeks before the season, get them up, and then transplant them outside, you'll have a much better chance of getting them to bloom.
Okay, great. Well, I think that's all the time we have for questions right now, but thank you so much. Lots of good information. I think we ripped through a lot of questions, and people sound like they're getting excited for gardening. We do want to mention once more the annual Spring Garden Extravaganza. It's organized by Bob Olin and St. Louis County Extension, and it's coming up this Saturday, right, Bob?
This Saturday, and there's still space in just about all the workshops. It's going to be a great time, body, mind, and spirit. We're going to do some very unique things, everything from growing potatoes to yoga in the garden to bonsai. It's going to be just a full day of lots of real fun activity.
It sounds like fun. Okay, we hope you have a good turnout there. And it was Earth Day this week.
Yes.
Did you guys celebrate?
Yes, I did.
Oh, good.
I stayed on the
Do you want to tell us you stayed on the earth?
Yes.
At the
up the
Duluth
state
Farmers Market, they're going to have some celebrations and things going on there this Saturday in honor of Earth Day. We wanted to mention that as well. But that's it. And again, next week we're going to be talking about succulents, and we'll have another great tour and great information from you guys as well, I'm sure. So thanks again for being with us. We want to thank our phone volunteers from St. Louis County Master Gardeners and from all of us here. Thanks for watching, and enjoy the garden.